My name is Mark Moriarty, CEO here at Awesound. For those of you who aren't familiar, let me just introduce Awesound from scratch. It's a place to publish your podcast where you can more easily and more profitably make money from that podcast. So instead of having to sell sponsorships in advance, just host your file for free and we'll automatically stick in ads according to who's listening. So different listeners will hear different ads. It's a radical change from the way podcasts are produced today. As you know, podcasting is growing really fast these days with the success of profit-making podcasts like Serial, building on top of years and years of free podcasts from the BBC and NPR. So it's a great time to get into it. So just to dive into the technical side of things for a moment, because I've got a lot of questions on how do we actually do it. So the way it works is if you look at any podcast, there's a feed and there's a media file. So the feed looks something like this. It's easy for a human to read it. It's just as easy for a machine to read it because it's so structured. Here's one from the BBC. It's the global news podcast that comes out twice a day. You see, each item tag corresponds to one episode. So if we zoom back a few days, look, here we are. Here's one episode. Here's the MP3 file that your podcast player will download if you want to listen to this episode. Notice that the podcast is hosted on bbc.co.uk, just like the feed is hosted on bbc.co.uk. And so if you're listening, whether it be on iTunes or one of those Android apps or another iOS app like Downcast, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Instacast, whatever you're listening to, that app will just find this MP3 file here at this URL. If you listen via iTunes, it's important to know that iTunes never hosts the file. If you search, iTunes search will just tell you, go here to find the feed, which is the feed we were just looking at. So different companies like SoundCloud and Awesound host the files and host the feed. And the way Awesound works is that here's a podcast series by Greg from Boston. If we listen to one of his shows in something like iTunes and just let it play.
Thank you for listening to Casual Conversations with Awesome People.
What you'll notice,
notice,
after a few seconds, you'll notice that at the time when Greg asks for the podcast to be interrupted, we stick in an ad.
Host your show and add links.
And there's a link, so we can click on the link in the ad.
Today's guest, Scott. He's definitely an awesome guy. Scott.
Just like you can have links in any other part of the podcast, when Awesound sticks in an ad into the podcast, we make sure that it's interactive so that the listener, in this case, it's an ad for Awesound, very meta, but generally the ad will not be for Awesound, it will be for something that's more relevant to the listener. That was just to show you the demo. So that's the concept. Depending on who's listening, we splice and dice the media file at the times when the publisher recommends to stick in interactive advertisements, in addition to the interactive things that the publisher can put in themselves. At the end of the day, the publisher earns a lot more money and it's a lot easier, the publishing process. So if you are a publisher, please sign up, check it out on Awesound, follow us on Twitter, drop us an email if you have any questions, if you'd like to get in touch with me directly. My own Twitter is mbym, that's M by M. And of course, if you're with any app, publishing agency, ideally, if you represent a company like the BBC and you're involved in research and development of new ways to consume audio and share audio, we'd really love to hear from you, if even just to chat about, different ways of advancing. BBC in particular are the one in the UK who are probably most innovating new ways to interact with audio. So either way, hope to hear from you soon. Take care.